My name is Jessica Miller. I am 26 years old. A freelance architect. I build foundations for a living. But for the last 3 years, I have been the invisible foundation for my family, paying every bill to keep their fantasy alive. I thought I was their daughter. Then, it was Tuesday, 7:14 in the evening. I was holding 2 bags of groceries when my key hit a wall inside the lock. It wasn't stuck. It was rejected. New tumbler. Fresh brass. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mother. Christina. It read, "We need space. Tyler is the man of the house now. You can come back when you learn respect." I didn't scream. I didn't pound on the door. I set the groceries on the mat like a delivery driver, turned around, and walked back to my car. I need to ask you, have you ever been the one paying for everything? Only to be treated like you were the burden. Drop a yes in the comments if you know exactly how cold that feels. I am reading every single one. I sat in the driver's seat. The engine idling beneath me. The air conditioning was off. But the cold started in my chest and radiated outward until my fingertips felt numb against the steering wheel. It wasn't the heat of anger. It wasn't the burn of tears. It was absolute zero. The kind of cold that preserves things. Or kills them. I looked at the townhouse. My townhouse. The lights were on in the living room. I could see shadows moving past the curtains. Tyler. My mother. They were probably opening a bottle of wine. Celebrating their coup. Thinking they had just disciplined an unruly child. They thought I was driving away to cry at a friend's house. They thought I would call in an hour. Begging to be let back in. Promising to be better. Promising to pay more. They had no idea who was sitting in this car. I pulled my phone from the center console. The screen glowed blue in the darkening cabin. I didn't open my contacts. I didn't text Rebecca or call my mother. I opened my banking app. Face ID recognized me instantly. The balance stared back. Healthy and precise. I navigated to the recurring transfers tab. There it was. The monthly standing order labeled Household Support. $3,500. Scheduled for the 1st of every month. It was the rent I paid for a room in my own house. It was the tax I paid for their affection. My thumb hovered over the edit button. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about how they would buy groceries or pay the electric bill. I thought about the key that didn't turn. I thought about the text message telling me to learn respect. I tapped cancel. The app asked for confirmation. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer?" I tapped yes. Deleted. Gone. I wasn't done. I scrolled down to the credit cards section. The supplementary platinum card I had given my mother 2 years ago for emergencies. She had defined emergencies as designer handbags and organic wine. I tapped the card icon. Freeze card. The toggle slid from green to gray. Card frozen. I sat there and watched the screen. 30 seconds later, a notification popped up. Transaction declined Whole Foods Market. $112. Then another. Transaction declined Uber Eats. $45. They were ordering dinner. They were celebrating my eviction with my money. Not anymore. The notifications were silent. Clinical. And lethal. They were the sound of a lifeline being cut. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat. I put the car in drive. I didn't look back at the townhouse. I didn't honk. I didn't scream. I simply pulled away from the curb and drove toward the highway. I didn't go to a friend's house because friends ask questions. And questions require answers. And answers require emotions I couldn't afford right now. I drove to the Omni Hotel downtown. I handed the valet my keys and walked to the front desk. I booked a suite for a week. When I got to the room, I turned off my phone completely. I didn't want to hear the panic. I didn't want to hear the rage. I wanted silence. I ordered room service, ate alone, and slept the sleep of the dead. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a creditor, and the account was closed. The hotel room was quiet. The kind of heavy, expensive silence you only get with thick carpets and blackout curtains. I didn't turn on the TV. I sat by the window, looking out at the city skyline, and let the truth settle around me like dust after a demolition. My family called me a parasite. They called me a leech. They told everyone who would listen that I was living off the fat of our father's secret fortune, squatting in a luxury townhouse that belonged to the family trust. Here's the punchline. There was no trust. There was no secret inheritance. My father died with $4,000 in his checking account and a mountain of medical debt. The townhouse wasn't a gift from the grave. It was a structure I built, brick by painful brick. I am a freelance architect. I specialize in high-end sustainable retrofits. For 3 years, I worked 80-hour weeks. I took calls at 3 in the morning. I ate dinner from vending machines. I missed my best friend's wedding because I had to finish a rendering for a client in Tokyo. I poured every cent of that labor into the down payment. The deed doesn't say, "The estate of Robert Miller." It says, "Jessica Miller." I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. Why did I let them believe the lie? Why did I let them move in, take the master suite, and relegate me to the guest room in my own home? For a long time, I told myself it was duty. I told myself I was being the good daughter, keeping the family together after Dad passed. But sitting there, watching the headlights move on the highway below, I finally admitted the ugly, structural truth. I wasn't being kind. I was paying rent. It's a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. But in my head, I called it the invisible chain. When you grow up as the spare part in the machinery of a family, you learn early on that your existence is conditional. Tyler was loved because he existed. I was loved only when I was useful. If I wasn't fixing a problem, paying a bill, or absorbing a crisis, I was invisible. So, I created a dynamic where I was indispensable. I paid the mortgage. I paid for the groceries. I lent Tyler $12,000 for a startup that failed in 3 months. And I never asked for it back. I wasn't supporting them. I was paying a subscription fee for a family that had no intention of renewing my contract. I thought if I paid enough, if I sacrificed enough comfort, eventually, the balance sheet would tip in my favor. I thought eventually they would look at me and say, "Thank you. You are enough." But love isn't a vending machine. You can't put coins in until affection falls out. My mother's text message, telling me to learn respect, was the final audit. I realized I had spent 3 years building a castle for people who would happily lock me in the dungeon. The chain snapped. I wasn't a survivor anymore. I was the landlord, and I was done subsidizing tenants who were trying to evict me. I picked up the hotel phone and dialed the front desk. I extended my stay for another week. I needed time to prepare the paperwork. If they wanted a war over ownership, I would show them exactly who held the keys. For 3 days, I became a ghost. I didn't leave the hotel room. I worked on client blueprints, ordered coffee, and watched my family dismantle my life through the glow of my phone screen. Silence is a powerful lens. When you stop filling the room with apologies and explanations, you finally see people for exactly who they are. I created a burner Instagram account to watch the show. It was grotesque. Tyler didn't waste a second. On Wednesday afternoon, less than 24 hours after kicking me out, he posted a photo. It was a selfie taken in my master bathroom, the one with the soaking tub I had saved for 6 months to install. He was holding a glass of scotch, wearing a bathrobe I recognized as one I had bought for Dad years ago. The caption read, "Finally, taking the throne. New beginnings. Number homeowner, number blessed. Number the castle I deserve. He wasn't just claiming the space, he was erasing me from it. Then came Rebecca's stories. She walked through my living room, filming a pile of black garbage bags by the door. So glad we can finally declutter, she chirped, panning over my books, my throw pillows, the framed architectural sketches I had drawn in college. Getting rid of all this cheap energy. Time to elevate the vibe. Cheap energy. Those sketches won awards. Those pillows were hand-woven. But to Rebecca, they were trash because they belonged to the servant. Then, the texts started. They weren't apologies. They weren't even questions about where I was or if I was safe. They were tech support tickets. Tyler, what is the code for the Nest thermostat? It is stuck on 65 and it is freezing in here. Mom, the blinds in the living room won't go down. Did you break the remote before you left? Fix it. Rebecca, we need the Wi-Fi password. The one on the fridge isn't working. They were helpless. They were living in a machine they didn't know how to operate, demanding the manual from the person they had just thrown into the street. I didn't reply. I let the messages pile up, a digital monument to their incompetence. I used to wonder how they could sleep at night. How could my mother take $3,500 a month from her daughter and still look at me with such disdain? How could Tyler borrow money he never intended to pay back and still walk around with his chest puffed out? Psychologists call it the delusion of power of the empty wallet. It is a specific form of narcissism found in people who believe status is an inherent trait, not an earned outcome. Tyler and my mother didn't see my money as a gift. They saw it as a tribute. In their minds, they were royalty by birthright. And I was the peasant born to farm the land and pay taxes. They didn't feel gratitude when I paid the mortgage for the same reason a king doesn't thank his subjects for the harvest. It is simply what is owed. They truly believed that evicting me was a correction of the natural order. They thought that by removing me, they were finally removing the stain of mediocrity from their lives. They had no idea that the mediocrity was paying the electric bill. They were sitting on a throne made of cardboard, celebrating their reign, completely unaware that I had already struck the match. I watched Tyler's story again. He was toasting the mirror, drunk on the fantasy of ownership. I turned off my phone. Let them freeze. Let them sit in the dark. Real power isn't posting about it. Real power is holding the deed. I met Marcus, my forensic accountant, on Friday morning. His office was the antithesis of my family's chaos. It smelled of mahogany and ink. There was no screaming here. No guilt trips. Just the quiet, brutal honesty of numbers. I sat across from him, my hands folded on the polished desk, ready to finalize the eviction notice. I wanted this clean. I wanted them out by Monday. Marcus slid a file across the desk. He didn't look happy. He looked fascinated. Jessica, he said, adjusting his glasses. We found something in the title history. You need to see this. I opened the folder. It was a dense stack of financial records dating back 5 years. I saw my monthly transfers. $3,500. Every single month. I had always assumed that money was going toward my mother's lifestyle, her country club dues, her wardrobe, the organic groceries she insisted on. But as I traced the line items, the math didn't add up. The groceries were there. Yes, but they were a fraction of the total. Where did the rest go? I asked. Marcus pointed to a recurring debit labeled servicing fee. Your mother didn't just spend your money, Jessica. She was servicing a debt. The room seemed to tilt. It turned out that 4 years ago, before I even bought the townhouse, my mother had taken out a massive, predatory commercial lien against her own future assets to fund Tyler's failed business ventures. When I bought the townhouse, she had somehow manipulated the paperwork, forging a guarantor document to attach that lien to my address. My $3,500 wasn't rent. It was interest. I had been paying off the loan for the business Tyler ran into the ground. And because I stopped paying on Tuesday, the loan had gone into immediate default. That wasn't the kill shot, though. The kill shot was sitting on top of the pile. It was a document from the Homeowners Association, dated just 2 days ago. Wednesday, the day after they locked me out. Marcus tapped the signature line. Look who signed this. It was Tyler's signature. Big. Looping. Arrogant. He went to the HOA office to get the gate codes changed, Marcus explained, a rare smile touching his lips. He told them he was the new owner. He wanted the head of household status so he could use the clubhouse and the VIP parking spots. I stared at the document. To get clubhouse access, Tyler had signed a declaration of primary tenancy, unknowingly taking legal responsibility for the commercial lien attached to the property one created by Mom's fraudulent guarantor setup. Because the loan was now in default, his signature made him the liable party. He hadn't inherited status. He'd inherited a 6-figure debt accruing at 22% interest. Marcus met my eyes. Not yet, he said when I asked if Tyler knew. The bank will notify him within 48 hours. I told Marcus to print everything. I intended to deliver it myself. That evening, I arrived at my townhouse to find Tyler, Rebecca, and their guests, hosting a dinner party with my furniture and my credit. With Officer Miller beside me, I rang the doorbell. Tyler opened it, smug until I handed him the envelope. Inside were 3 documents: the deed with my name, the default notice for the loan Mom had taken in his name, and the HOA form he'd signed, claiming head of household. As he read, his confidence collapsed. There is no trust. I told him, I bought this house, and Mom's loan I stopped paying. It's in default. And since you claimed residency the next day, you now own the debt. The wine glass fell from his hand. How much? He whispered. $182,000. Plus interest. Rebecca panicked. My mother screamed at me to fix it. I told her the truth. She hadn't raised me. She had invested in me as her retirement plan. And the investment was over. Officer Miller announced they had to leave. I added that I'd already sold the house and the developer wanted it empty by midnight. I walked out as their world fell apart. Weeks later, the townhouse was bulldozed. Tyler's credit collapsed. They ended up in a cramped apartment near the airport. Mom took part-time retail work. Rebecca moved back home. Tyler now works double shifts to pay a debt he'll never outrun. I moved into a small loft. It was quiet, unsettling at first. But when I opened my budget and deleted the family support category, I felt something unfamiliar: freedom. Cutting off family isn't heartless, it's survival. Sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones draining you dry. I didn't lose a family. I removed a parasite. If you're clinging to a burning rope because you fear the fall, let go. You may discover you can fly.